Today, we got a little bit of a mystery going on here. Was Suko in the new Godzilla X Kong really taller than Kong from 1973? Well, in this video by Goji Center, that's exactly what he's going to be explaining. Suko was taller than my boy
Godzilla
Kong.
Kong, the new empire,
He was a
introduced
baby.
us for the first time to the rest of the great apes in live action.
Let's figure it out.
These weren't just any simians.
If you haven't
these
yet,
were Hollow Earth
scroll
great
down, hit
apes.
that subscribe button for me.
Because they resided in this environment and not on Skull Island, we are now dealing with different rule sets regarding the growth of these monsters. The task for today is to explain why the adolescent Kong from the film Kong Skull
that's
Island
already
is smaller in stature than Suko, an infant.
He was almost 50
Yes,
feet
if this
taller.
is your first time hearing this fact, this may sound a little bizarre. How
It
is
was
an
pretty
infant
surprising
taller
when I
in
heard that, 'cause
stature
look
than
how
a
small
teenager?
he looks.
Well, in this episode, we will discuss exactly why Suko managed to grow taller than Kong when he was a teenager, and go as far as explaining how Kong managed to grow taller than most of the great apes in Hollow Earth. Pay close attention because you don't want to miss any details.
Close attention here.
Subscribe and get ready to watch Suko's and Kong's growth rate explained.
Let's get it.
Okay,
The growth
to
rate,
begin explaining this weird phenomenon, we must first match up who we are talking about. Suko in Godzilla Kong: The New Empire measured approximately 149
149
feet in
is
height.
crazy for Suko.
Reference,
I thought he
that
was
is
smaller.
just 2 feet shorter than the Statue of Liberty. Very, very tall nonetheless.
That's a big baby.
Pay attention to how this one has infant proportions. What is this?
He's also adorable.
Infants are often characterized as having an enlarged head, large eyeballs, and a small body in comparison to its skull. This is what makes a baby look like a baby. As your body grows to adolescence, your skull tends to grow at a slower rate than the rest of your body.
Your
This
noggin
is why
gets big,
adults,
bro.
in most cases, have a smaller head in comparison to their bodies, giving them the said adult body proportions that make them look like full-grown individuals. Suko, as you can see, can be categorized as an infant
Suko's got
due
that
to these
noggin on him.
characteristics. Now
No
comes the
offense.
adolescent Kong from
To my boy.
1973. This one was considered a teenager.
That difference is
You'll
crazy.
immediately note that its body proportions resemble that of an adult more than an infant.
It does,
Kong,
for sure.
however, only
Suko's got the
measures
noggin, I'm telling you.
104 feet in height here. A whole 45
104.
feet shorter than this infant. This is where most people scratch their heads and
That's
wonder,
me.
how is this even possible? Well, the answer lies in where these two grew up. Suko here
we know
grew up
why
in a
it's
place
possible.
known as Hollow Earth. Down
Suko
in the
and Hollow
bowels
Earth.
of the planet lies an
I guess there's
incomprehensibly
different
vast
growth patterns
environment
there?
with resources to adequately sustain large life forms. Kong, on the other hand, grew up in Skull Island, an isolated island somewhere in the Pacific that is often described as Hollow Earth come to the surface, a mini version of the flora-fauna that is found in Hollow Earth. Here's one of the reasons why Suko was already taller than Kong, but
I can't get over that,
is
that
just the
height
tip of the
comparison.
iceberg. There's a lot more reasoning behind this. Enjoying this episode? Here's a quick reminder to subscribe and to also click the link below to check out our official Goji Center merch, as well as graphic tees showcasing the most powerful predators of all time.
I cannot.
For better
I
context,
still
we'll
don't
have
know
to go
how.
back to the graphic novel Skull
we know
Island's
how
Birth of
Suko's
Kong.
bigger, but like
we are introduced to a tribe of these
I can't
great
believe
apes that
he's bigger
lived
than
here on Skull Island.
that Kong.
You'll note that these
Teenage
apes
Kong?
don't really measure up to
The
the size
baby
of
was
adult Kong, who measures 337 feet in height.
Now, adult Kong,
These apes
yes,
were
he's
a little
big.
less than 2/3 of Kong's adult form. But why? Let us explain. Here on Skull Island, growth rates are different from that of Hollow Earth apes due to environmental and biological constraints. Hollow Earth is practically infinitely more vast than this island, limiting the growth cap of these creatures. Additionally, these great apes seem to have suffered from a phenomenon known as indeterminate growth, meaning that factors such as space, food quality,
So you mean to tell me if I was
and
born in
most
Hollow Earth, right?
importantly, stress were a major reason why these guys never reached
I don't know
the
if that
height of
makes
the
sense,
larger
though.
Hollow Earth apes, being capped in height at around 200
So the Skull
feet or
Island
so.
apes,
Stress
they're gonna be
was
smaller
likely
than the Hollow
larger
Earth apes.
factor here. It is
But
a
if you
well-known
saw in
fact that
Godzilla
these
X
apes
Kong,
shared this island with the Skull
the Iwi tribe, they weren't bigger
Vicious,
than Gia.
relentless
You know what I'm saying?
predators that, when not sleeping, were always
And there were some kids
hunted.
there, so like
The rivalry between these
they
two
were born down
species
there.
reached a point where they began killing each other in large
You know what I'm saying?
numbers.
I don't know.
This was
Make
perhaps
sense of
the
it in the
biggest
comments, please.
stressor that limited the growth of these apes. Eventually, this conflict was rendered down to a last stand where many apes, including Kong's parents, were killed.
R.I.P.
The finishing blow
R.I.P.
inflicted by Ramarak, the assassin that killed Kong's parents right before his very eyes. Not only that, but this happened immediately after he was born. If that's not
Dang.
stressful enough, then imagine being
That's
a
pretty
40-foot
stressful.
infant ape on an island full of predators with absolutely no one to take care of you. If anything, the stress would have only been higher for Infant Kong than the stress inflicted on a whole group of apes with each other to rely on under the threat of skull crawlers. Further evidence of this increased stress on Kong, consider that apes, including us humans, usually surpass half of the height of the parents by adolescence in most cases. This Kong in 1973 only gets past this threshold by a bare
Bro, Kong
minimum.
was tiny now that I'm
Something
seeing
is
all
a little
this.
bit off here. Kong between infancy
In
and
comparison,
adolescence
not
has
tiny to
grown
us,
less
but
than
like
he should.
tiny to the rest
Why?
of him and his species.
Stress. Ramarak was still around, and the presence of this one plus the
Ramarak.
remaining predators would have made Kong go through the said indeterminate growth, limiting his potential greatly. Between infancy and early stages of adolescence, this smaller Kong would develop the previously mentioned adult proportions, but not
wonder why Ramarak
adolescent
didn't
height.
kill Kong
it was
as a baby.
after he managed to kill Ramarak that he finally was able to unlock full
He
growth
should've.
potential. Not only did he kill the most dangerous
plot
predators
armor.
around,
You already know,
but
bro.
he now had a whole ecosystem all to himself, establishing himself as the apex predator on the island, and close to nothing was able to challenge his spot on the food chain.
Kong's a savage,
This is
bro.
why it
What
was
do you say?
mentioned in GVK that he grew very fast in very little time, more than 233 feet in only 51 years. But this did not
51
just
years.
stop here.
I feel like that's how tall
Ironically,
I'll be in
Kong
about
ended up
50
growing
years.
taller than many of the great apes.
I feel like
in
I'm gonna be about
Hollow Earth,
200
thanks
foot
to
tall.
having the island all to himself. Let's go back to
Suko.
Suko. Hollow Earth apes would be around the same size as a full-grown Kong, meaning that
You see what I'm saying
proportionally
about the
speaking,
Iwi
their
tribe
infants would
comparison?
by
Like, why does it
default
work
be
that way
around
for the
this
apes and stuff
height,
like that,
which
and all
so
the other
happens to
monsters,
be around the
but not
size
the
of
humans?
teenager Kong, whose parents suffered through some
Wonder
sort
why.
of dwarfism due to ecological circumstances discussed already. This is why Infant Kong was so small also, because his parents were small compared to Hollow Earth apes. Suko admittedly was not a newborn infant. We'd like to think that Suko was the equivalent of an 8 to 11-year-old. Not quite the adolescent,
8 to
but
11, I
also
can see
not
that,
a
yeah.
newborn infant. One who lived long enough to endure and remember the abuse inflicted on him by the Scar King, and one able to fight back if attacked.
Exactly,
An
yeah. So he's
adolescent
not like a
Suko
baby
would then
baby.
adopt the characteristics
But he's
of
a
a
kid.
sub-adult great
He's a
ape,
kid.
a lengthened body, limbs, and smaller head compared to his body, similar to his parents, whoever they were, but most likely Scar King himself being the father. That's right.
Is that what we
in a
think?
scene
We think
during
Scar
the
King's
film,
the
we
father?
can very quickly witness an interesting detail in Scar King's throne room. Upon getting up and roaring, a few female apes began to shelter their offspring from the Scar King. What color were they?
They
Brownish
do look
red,
like-
identical to Suko.
That makes sense,
Which brings
okay.
up the next question. If Scar King actually was the one who fathered Suko, how tall could this guy actually get? And could
Hey, he can get up there.
outgrow Kong? Well, given that all things in the Monsterverse could
Suko
literally
is
be a
pretty
dumb
lanky.
writer's pen stroke away from becoming reality, we can't predict whether or not Suko will be taller or not. However, based on the parents of Suko alone, we can predict that he might be a little taller than or around the same size as Scar King, who was at
Okay,
around
Suko. I hope we see more of
318
Suko in
feet
the
height.
in the
Scar
future
King
movies.
belonged to a species of great ape that was more lanky and agile instead of muscular like his adoptive father.
And
Kong.
Suko's gonna be a savage.
Suko's mother was probably
He's gonna
one
be
that
agile
resembled
like his
Kong a
father,
little
and then
more,
being taught
with
by Kong?
characteristics similar to a larger gray
Suko's
or
gonna be
brown
nice with it.
gorilla.
I'm calling it right now. Suko, like I said, is gonna be a savage. Did you guys know that Suko was taller than Kong? Well, I'm not the Kong now, but you saw it explained. Thank you for watching with me. I'll see you tomorrow. I love ya. Goodbye.